I know I'm the bottleneck and I keep jumping in to help, but it stops others from growing. How would I go about resolving this? I am still, despite my best efforts, I am still often the one that everyone comes to say, what about this? What about that? And it's tricky because, there's a lot up here that I've tried to put into our operating policies and procedures, but I haven't put it all in there for sure. So I have struggled with this as being the bottleneck, and it is a constraint on growth, honestly.
So hello, this is the Stronger Business Together podcast, where business owners learn from other business owners. No theory, no gurus, just real journeys and real hurdles. Today, I'm joined by Richard Hubble, who runs It's Easy website in Gloucestershire. And like any owner, he's in the middle of building, fixing and growing something that really matters. So Richard, welcome.
Hi.
So Richard, in plain English, what does your business do?
Pretty simple, really. It's a digital marketing agency, primarily focused around providing websites for startups and small businesses in Gloucestershire, but also providing some related services such as social media marketing, pay-per-click advertising, search engine optimization, and the rest of the digital marketing arena that our clients are looking for.
Richard, who do you love helping, and what are they typically dealing with and why they come to you?
So interestingly, I basically help small businesses in particular, because they're the ones that don't have a marketing team obviously built into the business, and they're the ones that really need the help more than anybody else. I think startups, brand new businesses who don't really understand a lot of the stuff that we do, and small businesses who want to grow but don't have the resources to be able to do. So that's who I love helping the most, and that's really what I set the business up to do.
Brilliant. And when did you start the business? And what was that original spark or idea?
It was 9 years ago. And why did I start the business? But I'd worked in a corporate career before that, in corporate sales for an international telecoms businesses and things like that. And I just had enough of the rat race, and I wanted to get back to running my own small business again. And so I just cast around to see what sort of markets I was interested in, and digital marketing was sort of the one that I settled on and that I had the most affinity with. So that's why I did it.
Excellent. So I understand you're a franchise. So what does a business look like today, and the sort of size and the shape?
Yeah, so I bought the franchise basically to reduce the risk, really, and also as a small business myself, a sole trader initially myself, I obviously didn't have resources to be able to do everything. I didn't want to be a bottleneck or anything like that to growth. And so a franchise seemed like the logical way forward for that. And it's proved to be brilliant, absolutely fantastic for me. We've now grown to over 350 clients and 6 staff, and turning over six-figure number every year. So it's been a decent growth path.
Yeah, excellent. 9 years of growth and getting there with everything you're doing. So, why do customers pick you, and how do you delight them?
They pick me and my business primarily because of the local support. We have a lot of focus on helping the clients and really supporting them locally. That, I think, is the most important thing that they're looking for. But they also want, really good quality websites that load quickly and are secure and safe in today's cybersecurity conscious world, and are really easy to edit and update and keep up to date. So those content, those concepts, combined with the other related services that we offer, is probably the reason people pick us. But certainly I would say it's the local support that is the one that most people mention most often.
So tell me about one proud customer that you have. Tell us about them.
Well, okay. Yeah, there's one that's just sprung into my mind now, because I've literally just seen the client, and he was doing okay, I would say. He was getting about 3,500 hits on his website every month. He was getting some inquiries via his website. He'd been going for many years, 25, 30 years, I think, if I remember rightly. But he'd kind of lost contact with his web design partner. They sort of stepped away from the business and weren't really helping him at all. He felt he was probably leaving business on the table that he would otherwise have got had he had a more effective website. So we had a chat. He came into my office, we had a chat, and in the end, he agreed to go with me, and we designed a new website for him, and it went live. And within a year, he'd gone from sort of 3,500 hits every month to about 12,000 hits a month, which was huge growth, and he's now up to about 15,000 hits every month on his website. And he's getting inquiries literally every day, 2, 3, 4 inquiries every day on his website. So it's worked fantastically for him, and I'm proud of what we've managed to do for his business. And he says lovely things about it, to the point where he even invited me along to his staff Christmas party because he felt that we were part of the team, which was a lovely thing to happen. And it's the sort of relationship we try to build as much as we can, obviously, with all our clients.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that one. That was beautiful. Let's talk about your business. How do you go about generating leads?
So for my business, obviously our website generates leads. You'd be surprised if I said anything else. But also, I think the primary way we've generated new clients is through business networking. But also, we've done a little bit of traditional marketing, I'd call it, as far as handing out, doing leaflet drops and brochures and stuff like that. And our business networking probably generates 60% of all our new clients. And then the other big source of business is existing clients recommending us. So another 20 or so percent comes through existing client recommendations. And then the remaining 20%, as I said, comes from the website and a few other bits and bobs that we've been doing. We get a little bit because we're on a main road in an office with obviously signage and things, so people do see us that way as well. We've raised the profile of the business locally by doing that and investing in that office location.
Wow. And I mean, 20% referral from customers. I mean, that just is testament to, how well they enjoy what they get successful from working with you. So that's absolutely brilliant. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good number. It is a good number. I'd always like more. I can always cope with more, mate.
So what are you aiming for in the next 12 months for the business, and why?
My next target is to get to a magic number of 500 clients. So it's going to take a couple of years to get to that, to be fair, from where we are at the moment. And then I'll look to exit the business and sell up, most probably. Although I might put a manager in and keep an investment in it. But I think that's probably my likely exit plan.
Yeah. Excellent. Exciting times ahead. So let's go on to Act 2, your journey to date. So you talked about 9 years ago, you were sort of coming out the sort of corporate world and you were looking for something to do in the space. What was that initial, thought or problem you were trying to resolve in the marketplace?
I think I sort of touched on it earlier in that I felt that in particular for startups and small businesses, they need the help to get, to have an effective online presence. It's so important now. You've got to have an effective online presence nowadays. Even if it's not generating inquiries directly, it is, people check you out online before they'll choose to work with you. And so you have to have that effective shop window, if you like, digital shop window. And I had some skills around digital services. And when I very first left college, I was doing graphic advertising and design. So I had that skill set, which I thought was very transferable for this new market. And so it's proved to be.
Excellent. So over the last 9 years, there are highs and lows in every business. There are moments when the business just gets hard. So when did it get hard for you, and what did you learn about yourself and your business?
The hardest thing is hiring the right people. I'm sure many of your guests on your podcast have said a similar thing. It is tough to find the right people and keep them. I had a couple of fantastic business development execs that I'd hired who then got hired away from me. And that's always really challenging because you've invested time and money in bringing them up to a certain level of competence and they've become intrinsic parts of your business. And then suddenly they're They're wooed away by somebody who pays them £10,000 a year more than you can afford, for example, is one exact example of what happened. And so that is always, I think, the toughest, is getting the right people and getting them onboarded and training them up without it distracting from your normal working work. Because, your normal working day is already full, and then suddenly you're creating bigger workload for you to bring somebody on board and train them up and get them up to the speed. I think that's been the hardest part of my particular journey. Many of my fellow franchisees don't have staff. They just do it themselves. And when they're full, if you like, if they're up to capacity, then that's where they stop. I'm more ambitious than that. I want to grow this into a business that in effect runs without me. And therefore you've got to, at some point, bite the bullet, take people on, train them up, and get them working for you, so that you have that flexibility of taking some time off and still knowing the business is running without you. So that was my choice. And I'm glad that was my choice most of the time. Occasionally not. Occasionally I think, why have I got this stick beating myself up with? But most of the time I'm happy I made that strategic decision fairly early on in the business's life.
People is always one of the biggest hurdles in all their guises and everything else that we have to do. I mean, what's one habit that you've put in place within the business that brings the team together stronger?
We have a weekly meeting. In fact, we had one this morning. Every Tuesday morning, we have a couple of hours where we all get together and we review how last week's gone. We look at, any challenges that were arisen. We do some knowledge sharing between the members of the team, and then we plan out what we're going to do over the next 7 days or 5 working days. Although I end up working every day. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, so that in itself, that weekly rhythm of team meetings, which we rarely miss, except for the odd holiday, obviously, or somebody's off ill. But mostly it's very rare that any of us miss it, because it is such a valuable check-in, really, with everybody. And it's amazing how much you learn about. So one guy, this morning was talking about a particular client that he was doing a quarterly review for. And another member of the team said, "Oh, that's funny. I've just updated his website with this, this, and this." And if we didn't have those team meetings, they would have been plowing on in their own, journey of doing their roles without realizing the impact it was having on the other. And so I think that's really important. You don't get that sharing of knowledge any other way.
Yes. No, I agree. Totally agree. I don't know any other way that would take place. So thinking about your business over the last 9 years, is there any decisions you think you've made that changed the trajectory of your business?
Adding on the additional services, the social media marketing, the pay-per-click advertising, the search engine optimization, the other services, the complementary services around, it still means that the websites are the core of what we do and the primary focus of the business. But those additional services have helped the business in 2 ways. A bit of additional revenue, lovely, which helps to pay for the staff. But 2, it's helped retain clients because it increases their loyalty because they've got multiple services from us. It's not just a website provider. It's a website provider, it's an email provider, it's a search engine optimization provider, it's a social media marketing provider. So we're partnering with our clients in a much broader sense. And I think that is probably what changed the trajectory of my business for the better. And I didn't do that for the first 3 or 4 years because I was still, learning the ropes and everything. But once I'd done that, I think we had a much more rounded business.
Yeah. Fantastic. And everyone's talking about AI and using AI in businesses these days. So where does AI genuinely save you all time, and where's it still maybe a distraction?
We're a little bit of an AI cynic as a business. We don't use it much, which might be surprising to you, bearing in mind the business we're in. But I believe quite strongly, I think, that we need to keep the creativity into what we do. And I'm not sure AI actually is that great at creativity, because it tends to, when a poster for an event has been created via AI, it just kind of looks like all the other posters for all the other events that have been created by AI. And
Yeah, it
when
does
AI,
average everything.
yeah, and when AI has written copy for a website, there's always some giveaways, and you think it's the same. I just want to hear a much more authentic tone, voice from the client. And so whether we're writing it for them or they're writing it themselves, I think individuality matters nowadays more than anything. And Google in particular, for example, ranks websites that have more original human content versus AI generated content, for example. Even though Google's got its own AI agent, which is hilarious, but it actually ranks websites that have less AI in them higher. So it's trying to play both sides of the tracks, which is typical Google, but that's fine. That's how come they're the biggest company in the world, or one of them. But for me, in particular, because we're working with small local businesses or smaller local businesses, I want them to have their own voice. I want them to be original and, as I said, authentic and genuine. And so I don't think AI really works in that context very well. So we're kind of resisting the inevitable, maybe, but we're resisting it for as long as we can. We're resisting it.
Yeah, there's a really successful company in the UK, Games Workshop, make model figures, and they have said we will never use AI to design the figures. We'll never use AI to write our stories and our copy. And they've actually banned it internally because of that reason, because it's all about creative, and their product is about engagement, physical engagement, and also enjoying and painting and structuring it. So yeah. Really interesting about creative side. Definitely.
I don't think it's something that AI is particularly optimized for the creative. Yeah. No, I'm sure things will change, but at the moment we're resisting the onrushing trend in that respect.
Brilliant. So a final question in this section. So you talk about your weekly meeting as a team. Is there anything else that you do to keep the business focused on doing the right things and remaining, healthy even when it gets really busy?
I use a business coach who helps me and keeps me accountable. I think that's important. Acts as a sounding board, which is important. You need that really, because staff, whilst they're valuable members of the team, don't have the same perspective and don't have that experience that you need. So I find that quite helpful. But I'm fairly long in the tooth, so I kind of know what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's the main additional thing. I am doing an increasing amount of bringing in training. So, for example, for my business development lady, I got some external sales training in for her to help round out her skills a bit and give her a different voice to listen to other than mine, which is never a bad thing, I think. But yeah, I think that's probably the main thing.
Brilliant. Love all those. Fantastic. So let's move on to Act 3 now, our hurdle round. So we've picked a question from a listener today. So what's the hurdle that we're going to discuss?
So the question was, I know I'm the bottleneck and I keep jumping in to help, but it stops others from growing. How would I go about resolving this? And this question definitely resonated for me because I often feel like I am still, despite my best efforts, I am still often the one that everyone comes to say, what about this? What about that? What about this? And it's tricky because, there's a lot up here that I've tried to put into our operating policies and procedures documents, but I haven't put it all in there for sure. So I have struggled with this as being the bottleneck, and it is a constraint on growth, honestly.
Yes, definitely.
Which for me is an anathema. I want to stop.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning with any hurdle problem solving. So what's happening today? What are the facts on the ground, do you think? And you talked about that. You've probably got some examples as well. So let's talk through that. So what's going on, do we think, in this business that's having this problem?
Interesting. I mean, all my team are under 25 or 25 or under. They're all really young. It's a young man or it's a young person's business in a lot of ways, this digital marketing world, right? So I've kind of purposely hired younger people because they have an affinity with the likes of Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatnot, which with my advancing years, I don't necessarily share. None of my team members have ever known a world without the internet or the mobile phone or Facebook.
So even with this level of bringing the younger people that have got this experience, what's happening today that would be causing you to be the bottleneck?
Well, a great example, one of my team might come to me. In fact, one of my team did come to me this very morning and said, how do I do this? And I realized that particular task, which I know how to do, I hadn't passed on to anybody else. So I hadn't informed the rest of the team on how to do it. Another one came to me and said, look, this client looks like they want another website. I don't know how to deal with that. Do I come to you? And I said, no, go to my business development manager instead. She can deal with it now. She knows how. I've trained her on how to do that. So until I had her trained up, I would have been the bottleneck there. At least now they've got two choices, right? They can come to her or me. And then we can, and some of the jobs need to be controlled. You don't want.
So there are natural bottlenecks. Absolutely. You do need points and it may have been your job previously. So yes.
And I don't necessarily want my support staff to be able to set up a new website sale on the admin system, for example, because I might have some rules and policies around that they won't be aware of, but which my business development manager and I obviously are. So there's things like that where I look at each job and I think, how many of the team need to know this or should know this or could know this and benefit from it? So I think that is hopefully giving you a flavour of what I mean by being a bottleneck.
So I can definitely see how that's showing up. So what have you tried already?
Well, I have written company policies and procedures, like an operating manual, where I've tried to download my brain and done a brain dump on how I do stuff, whatever stuff is, how I deal with whatever the task in hand is. But as I said, it's not comprehensive yet. Well, it probably will never be comprehensive because there'll be something that comes up that I hadn't thought about, which I'll then do. And I don't really update it that often. Honestly, I probably only updated it last when I brought on my latest employee. So things have happened since then, which I haven't updated. Things like that, really. Yeah,
absolutely. So there's always sort of written procedures which are available in the business, but there's the sort of collective knowledge and know-how within the business, which is often a lot bigger than just the process and procedures, and we can't just write everything down. So what do you think then is probably, if you think you've got a fairly good set of procedures, we can talk about that in a moment, but let's think about the collective knowledge within the business, the tribal knowledge. What do you think is sort of holding that back in terms of development and growth within?
So interestingly, in the team meeting this morning, something came up which I didn't know. So one of my support guys had worked out a way of doing something on one of the client websites that I wasn't even aware was possible, right? Which was really interesting. Every day's a school day and all that. So that knowledge was then shared amongst everybody. So we all now know how to do that particular little enhancement. Whether it's the classic, you don't know what you don't know, I think. So I think, he may well know quite a few other things that hasn't come up in the conversation in the team meetings, which could be useful to us all had it been brought to the fore as a learning from that week whenever it happened. And maybe we need to more formally put a things I learned this week section into the weekly team meeting. Maybe, I don't know.
Definitely,
it might be a useful thing. Actually,
we have that. We have a lessons learned, things that we've learned this week section within our daily meeting for writing things down.
Yeah, because you could forget it,
but also
after a week. You're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it has to be written down. And like any good meetings, things should only be talked about in a meeting that have previously been written down. It is vital because you can capture that. I mean, there are ways of capturing information and using it. AI is a great tool,
for that.
unfortunately. Yeah, it's great for that. You can take all your procedures, you can put it in a proper set of controlled environments so nobody else can get at it. And then you can use AI and you can tell AI that it can't make anything up. And if it doesn't know the answers in there, it has to say the answer's not in here. But it can go in and look through huge amounts of information that you've written over the time and pull out specific answers from that. So you can use AI to do that. But I often think, though, we as business owners can be a big bottleneck because we actually answer all the questions that come through. And what I mean by that is if you always answer the question, then those individuals have never been challenged to grow. How did you get that answer? Because once upon a time, you didn't know.
Yeah, and it's trial and error often, isn't it? I certainly remember discovering about, checking domains, for example, to see if they're available. And just because you Google it doesn't mean it's available. If there's nothing comes up and things like that, it might have been registered, but just not in active use yet and things like that. Just little things that I just learnt through default, really, by doing it and learning
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
So,
And that's one of the biggest things around that sort of collective knowledge in the business. If everybody keeps coming to you and asking the question and you always give an answer, they will always come to you and ask the question. Where actually, if you can turn around and say, okay, how would you solve this problem?
yeah, I probably
Yeah.
don't do that at all. Certainly
And
not
just
enough.
ask them to go away and solve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's some critical ones that maybe you want to give us some advice on. Absolutely. But building collective knowledge comes from collective knowledge. So everybody has to have that knowledge. And it doesn't come from one person telling it. It comes from everyone experimenting and playing and learning and understanding.
Yeah. Good point. Really good point. I don't really send them off. I think I probably because I think, well, we've only got so many hours in the day and I know the answer to this. So why don't I just tell them? But you're right. Maybe they should discover some of the things, at least, maybe the less time critical things themselves. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And other ones should maybe be brought to a group discussion. So you have a weekly meeting and you can say, Riley, I believe is in your business. So Riley, you asked me a question on last Wednesday. What was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hopefully he's now written that down because he knows he's going to be asked in that meeting. And what did you find out? So he's now collectively telling everybody around that. So everybody next time goes, oh, Riley might know how to solve this problem. Or actually, I remember Riley talking about this. And because you don't say, Riley said this and this was the answer, that's still you as the central point. If you're encouraging Riley to write that question down and then at the weekly meeting, talk about that question, talk about the answer that he came up with, you're now starting to share more of that collective knowledge between everybody.
Yeah, nice. I like it.
So often we think we're the bottleneck, but actually we have created the bottleneck. And that's often what's actually happening as business owners. And we think we're being quicker, but we're not, because all we're doing is we're just piling the next question on the next question on the next question that people come to us, rather than actually building a group of people that can solve problems. Why didn't Riley just go and solve that problem rather than actually come to you? Yes, it might be quicker today, but actually in the long run, he will constantly keep coming back and asking those questions.
It is interesting. I've made them have the team meeting occasionally when I'm not available. And that's been very interesting because the actions that come out of that meeting were just as good as if I had been there, typically.
Fantastic. Well done.
Which is good.
Well done.
But it is interesting.
Yeah. So from what we've talked through, what one experiment do you think you would do next week? So we're giving this advice to our listener that wrote in with this problem. What experiment would you try and advise them to try in the next week that could start to resolve this issue?
Well, I think what you just said, I mean, you said two things which I thought was interesting. One was write down the questions before the meeting so you know what you're going to be considering, because I generally, whilst I have a section in it saying, what happened, what went well, what went badly, blah, 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 what did you learn? We don't sort of have a process of capturing those in advance of the meeting. We capture them during the meeting, and maybe in an advance type of thing is a good idea because it also gives you better clarity of thought. But also this idea of, in effect, sending them off to do something, even if you know the answer, and do their own research, I think is something that I would certainly be looking to try and do a bit more of now, because you're right. Unless you let them grow in their own knowledge, and they're always going to keep asking you. And that's certainly where I sort of am at the moment. I am, the oracle. And I don't really want to be an oracle.
Fantastic. And what do you think, if you started doing that, what type of outcome would you think you'd expect over the next few weeks?
Well, I'd like to think that they'll be a bit more self-sufficient and a little bit less dependent, clearly, and maybe a bit more curious. Bring a bit more curiosity into their roles, which will make it more interesting for them, actually. Which will make hopefully would mean that they'll be happier at work, which is a virtuous circle then. So that
Beautiful.
could be
Love
quite
that.
a big impact from a very small little change.
Yeah. Fantastic. I really like that, Richard. Thank you. So let's go to our close and wrap up now. So what's maybe one thing you've heard yourself say today that surprised you?
That's a that's a really good question. One thing that surprised me, I think probably through the conversation earlier, realizing how I was still really annoyed at having a member of staff, in fact, two members of staff, get headhunted away from me. I haven't come to terms with either of those, actually, even though it was some years ago now, because I did put a lot of effort and time and money into developing them. And why should some other organization get the benefit of that time and effort and money? So yeah, that sort of surprised me. It is still annoying.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for your honesty. So, and finally, how can people get hold of you if they want to learn more about your journey and your business?
Of course, I'm online, as you'd expect. So you can search for It's Easy websites Gloucestershire and you'll find my website. You're welcome to email me at richard.hubble@itseasy.com. It's Easy as ITSEEZE, as per the little banner above me. And you can call me. I don't mind. I'm generally available. My mobile number is 07901 944 465.
Awesome. Richard, thank you so much for a fantastic conversation today.
Enjoyed it, mate. Well done. Thank you.